George Clooney and Brad Pitt's new movie, Wolves, is on Apple TV Plus September 27th.
That's where I want you to be now.
So if you want to see George Clooney and Brad Pitt, go to Apple TV Plus.
You got to start the story there.
Or if you want to see Brad Pitt and George Clooney, go to Apple TV Plus.
I am enjoying the show.
And if you want to see their new movie, Wolves,
You can't do it, I'm going to help you out. I can do it, so do it.
definitely go to Apple TV Plus.
Admit it is cool. Okay, fine, it was very cool.
Wolves, streaming September 27th on Apple TV Plus. Rated R.
Ampire.
Hey babies, hey babies, hey babies. Hi everyone, hi everyone. If you're watching on YouTube, Callow got his Cosme jersey. Look at that. That's sweet. I like
Only
it.
took a couple of days after the first game to come, but as I said, there's only one place to get them, so you have to deal with that company, and they're never on time. So happy to wear it the
When
next
was the
game.
last time you felt compelled to buy an offensive lineman's jersey?
Oh, this is actually a trend. This is not new. I had a
Oh.
Trent Williams jersey.
Okay.
Easy one though, like he was a beast.
Mhm.
I had a Chris Samuels jersey with
Oh,
the 70th anniversary. I also had a John Jansen jersey as
All
well.
right.
So if you're a beast of a lineman, I'll buy it. It's just, we haven't had a lot of those lately, so I haven't really partaken.
Yeah.
Brandon Sheriff would have been one, but he kept signing those 1-year deals, and I wasn't going to buy one until we got the long-term one. So here we go.
Everybody's an amateur film scout now, which is fine because I am too. Go watch Cosme last week. You want to see some funny things? Go watch him last week against the Giants. He dominated.
Right.
So he's really come along. It was a no-brainer to sign him. Anyway, real quick before we get into sports, last night Cal and I went to a concert. That's why I'm wearing my 930 Club shirt today, because I went to the Atlantis for the first time, which, by the way, it's like Honey, I Shrunk the 930 Club is the Atlantis. It's like it's first time I've been there. Exact same setup, except a miniature, and it's awesome. The people who do 930 Club and Atlantis, all that stuff, they really know what they're doing. We are actually very lucky to have venues like this in our city. Like it's awesome. I really, really, really enjoyed Atlantis last night.
It's probably one of my favorite things that I tell people when I tell them about 930, Atlantis, Anthem, Merriweather. They're all owned by IMP, and IMP is an independent music, venue group that knows how to do this. And even at Atlantis, I showed you the rooftop bar. You don't even know that thing exists if you don't go up the stairs there either. Like, just having cool little areas like that, and the service is always great at all those places. The sound is always great at all those places. And with the last night's show too, Joey Balance and Bray are like pretty big, but to have them sell out, that also always tells me with this area, everyone knows what they're doing with music in terms of like going to shows like that.
Mhm.
Like those guys don't fly under the radar in this type of city. So yeah, I think we're always super lucky to have really good venues and artists that people want to see. So yeah, I love the Atlantis. It's great.
Yeah, I drank a Pabst Blue Ribbon last night. I was really in the mood. I was full on. I'm like, let's go. I was like, let's go. I'm here. I'm in it. It was good. That was fun.
How did you like the spring-loaded floor? I was warning you about that heading in.
So not my favorite part of the whole thing.
Okay.
Not my favorite part of the whole
Fair enough.
thing. I like, as someone who grew up here and talks about how RFK shook, and I don't think it was initially purposefully meant to do that. I think just through the years, things started to break, and it started to shake. I don't know that I love that was part of it, because you could actually feel that the floor was a little spring loaded, and I didn't really love that part of the whole thing, honestly. Like, I like the idea behind it, but in practice, when you're 51 and your balance is being tested just a little bit, it's not the greatest. It's a little unnerving of a feeling. Like, I'm not going in the mosh pit anymore, and I'm not sure that I like the floor to be a trampoline. But that's, but I'm also, this place isn't for me, really. I mean, it's really built for people a lot younger than me. And I was just like basically loitering last night, being in a place that I probably didn't belong, but I don't care. I like good music, and these guys are good, and I wanted to see the venue. But it's not my favorite part of the whole thing. But I'm also old man. This is one of those, like, I remember when floors were steady, so whatever. So
I will say this though, that was my 4th time at that venue. That was by far the bounciest the floor had ever been. Like when I saw
Well, these
Third
guys
Eye,
are punks. They're basically playing punk music, so you're going to
Sure.
get that. Yes.
Right. Like I saw Third Eye Blind and it kind of bounced for one song. Like that's so I get what they're doing there too. Like certain artists are going to kind of demand it. I think what happened last night too is people felt the floor bounce and was like, "Oh, this is cool. We're going to keep doing this." I think that's what happened last night too.
Anyway, again, 9:30 Club people, Atlantis, awesome, great venue. I really enjoyed it last night. All right, let's do a little bit of sports. I'm just gonna totally steal your bit. You told me you did this yesterday. I don't know what else to talk about today. It's a Wednesday. There's not much happening. There's no major news. We already talked about Bryce Young, and frankly, I don't want to spend an hour talking about it anyway, or go through everybody's take on it because I really don't actually think it's all that complicated. It's the guy is struggling clearly mentally now, and let's just move on. Like, this is the right thing to do for him. Let him take a break. His career's not over. Let's figure out what happens next for him. But he can't play this week because he's going to crumble and it's going to be really, really bad. Anyway, so let's just get to other things. Let's just steal your bit. Who are the real 2-0 contenders? We got, good news for us. There's nobody in our division that is. So we're not chasing anybody at this point. That's really good. So I've got the list. Let's go through some of them. Let's start in the AFC. The 2-0 teams are the Bills, the Steelers, the Texans, the Chiefs, and the Chargers, of which I would say about almost all of them across the board, with maybe the exception of the Chargers. But I don't know what I don't know about them because Harbaugh's their coach now, and Harbaugh wins literally everywhere he goes. And we all know that Herbert's good. So, I don't know that I would put him in the great category yet because he hasn't won very much, but he is really, really good and a very high talent and tough and all of that stuff. So I don't know what I don't know about it. Kind of across the board, it's hard to say that any of them are posers. I might be a little surprised by the start of the Steelers. I might be a little, I don't know, surprised is the right word for the Bills, but I certainly didn't see them winning that division again just because of the change to their roster. Texans, Chiefs are chalk in this. I don't know that any of them I'd sit there and go, that's a poser in any of this.
I think what I did yesterday was who would drop into the 500-ish and who could drop into the bad tier. And I kind of look at the Steelers as they're going to drop into that 500 tier at some point. I really love their defense, but they haven't played anyone yet, right? They played the Broncos, they played the Falcons. The Falcons had game 1 under Kirk. We saw how low scoring that game was. The Broncos with Bo Nix can't move the ball. So
not yet.
The Steelers are the one that I think could drop a tier down to kind of 1-1. The one I also look at is the Chargers. The Chargers are the one where they're not going to win that division. They won't drop in terms of being a good team, I think, but they're not going to win that division. The Chiefs will eventually win that division. And so I kind of just do an asterisk on them, but I'm with you. A lot of them are not pretenders for the 2-0 teams.
So with the Bills, they just don't have as good a, they're kind of they fall into the Cowboys category for me. Their roster isn't as good as it was because they reset specifically on defense. Everybody made a lot of big deal of Stephon Diggs. It's a big deal. He's not there. But I actually looked at all the old defensive players that they kind of moved on from after last year. And I went, that's a total reset there. And then you look around the offense and you go, who will emerge as Allen's weapons? And it seems early he's starting to find those people. It's being spread around. They're scoring points, so they'll have a problem. This is a classic. This is a really good team, had a Super Bowl window. They didn't meet the Super Bowl window. The cap's caught up to them, but their quarterback is young enough and good enough that they have time to reset the roster around him. And at the same time, they'll remain really competitive because he's really good. And I just don't buy that this is their year, but it's hard to, when you have a really great player at that position, it's hard to bet against them. Go look at the Chiefs 2 years ago, or even last year when my buddy, who's a big Chiefs fan, said to me, you all had your chance to beat us last year. That was a reset year in a lot of ways, and you blew it. Now that we've kind of reloaded again and we have Pat Mahomes, good luck defeating us. And I think with the Bills, it's the same thing, actually. They're kind of right there. They have a good enough team. Allen's really, really good. I look on the whole and then look at their division, and maybe that's changed because of the Tua injury now. But I look at their division and I go, I don't think they're even the favorite to win their division this year, but I don't put it past Allen to be the best quarterback in the division. And if that's the case, then maybe they are playoff or more, or if the Jets are the Jets, then maybe they win their division game. They have a home playoff game, and then it's kind of a who knows situation with them.
Yeah, with the Bills, the like late training camp scuttlebutt with them too was apparently like even Allen was adjusting really well without Diggs, that they were going to have to force the ball around to a bunch of different receivers in a bunch of different ways. And I think we're seeing that through the first two games, that this could actually be one of your addition by subtraction kind of moves of the offseason, where that offense now isn't hyper tuned to force it to Diggs all of a sudden. And now Allen's kind of just, they're kind of just letting Allen cook, I guess, so to speak, where he's not, either looking at Diggs, then taking the ball and run. He's actually going to spread the ball around a little bit. I like them a lot. I'm with you. I don't know if their roster is as good, but kind of look at the Cowboys having last year too, though. They subtracted from their roster and all they did was mess around and win the division. So I don't know. Maybe we're seeing some of these trends where the rosters get turned over a little bit, but they make some other better moves that make the team better overall. And it actually ends up shaking out in the end.
Yeah, maybe. With the Steelers, I buy it. I mean, like we cite this stat every single year. Mike Tomlin's never had an under 500 record. This is a good start. And I agree, like it wasn't the best opponents, but Atlanta just won in Philadelphia. And I know that was their debut. And I think it needs to be pointed out, both of those games were won on the road and they gave up 16 points. And we could sit there and go, well, it's the opponent, but they won in their stadiums and gave up no points. So their defense is exactly what it always is, which is extremely difficult to deal with. They're going to have better quarterbacking play this year, whether it's stick with Fields or go to Russ at some point. It's going to be better quarterbacking play. They've invested in their offensive line. They have tough players. They can run the ball. Like, I actually buy this. And the fact that, like, I think some of it is Baltimore and Cincinnati got into a hole. Both of them are 0-2, and I'll get into them in a little bit and which one you have to buy, because I don't think you can buy both. I think you have to kind of pick one to get out of it, because I think their division's too tough. But I don't know that in the end I see Pittsburgh winning the division, but they're going to be right there because of this start. And the other thing, I remember when the schedule came out, and this was really weird, and I hated this happened. They don't play a division game until November 17th, not one of them. So let's see what it looks like when we get there, because realistically, if they can just maintain a lead in the division and they get to that, all they have to do is split the division games down the road, and one of those teams will probably go sideways, in all likelihood, Cleveland or Cincinnati. One of those two will probably go sideways. Those games may look different at the end of the year. So I don't know that I picked them as a contender, nor do I believe they're winning a Super Bowl, but I have a feeling there's staying power in this start because they haven't played a home game yet. So I buy Tomlin. I buy better quarterback play, maybe not great quarterback play, but better quarterback play. I buy their defense. I buy their system. I buy their toughness, and I buy their schedule. So I believe this. I wouldn't have picked them early, but I believe that this will have staying power.
I think it's going to be all about health for them too, though. We've seen in the last couple of years that they've gotten banged up, like TJ Watt's gotten hurt, and then that defense falls apart, or they've had other players get hurt, and all of a sudden they can't hold on to that 500 record, or they barely drop below 500. It's going to be staying healthy there. I still don't think they're going to win that division. I think they stay around 500. Maybe they win a couple more games, but those divisional games too could be brutal as well if everyone's still in it, and then all of a sudden they drop a couple of those. I'm not buying them as a contender. I am buying them, though, as a good team. I guess I'll call it that.
I think they are. And I think they're probably a playoff team. The way things have started, they're probably a playoff team. Texans, I think everybody knew would be good. The rest of the teams in their division are all 0-2. So, that's not going to stay that way. But that's there. If they win their division games, they already did one. Like, they're going to run away with that division. So that wouldn't be a surprise. Chiefs are obviously not a surprise, and are obviously a contender. The Chargers are a weird one. 2 wins, 2 really good defensive performances. They're going to be a run team. They're going to be a tough run team because that's Harbaugh. This Joe Alt guy's turned out to be a hit already. So they got the right left tackle. That's a huge thing. They can protect Herbert. He's dangerous. I feel like it's all kind of too new and not quite good enough, and they're in the wrong division because it's the Chiefs. But do they slip in as a wild card off of this start? And if they start to build momentum, and considering Harbaugh's history, why not? Like, I don't, especially if Denver's going to be really in a tough situation trying to get Knicks up to speed. And I think the Raiders, realistically, that doesn't feel like what happened last week in Baltimore. Doesn't feel like, oh, I think we've underestimated them. That feels a little bit like an aberration, honestly. So them being the second place team in that division, which means right in line for a wild card, would now offer their start not surprise me. But them overtaking the Chiefs, I'm not going anywhere near anything like that at this point.
No, I 100% agree on that. With the Chargers, what I actually love most about them is how they've won. They've won by running the ball, not by leaning on Herbert. And if you're looking at the trends of the NFL, like kind of like the Mina Kimes of the world that have looked at kind of how the NFL defenses have played these first 2 weeks, all defenses are going double high safety. Their number one priority, all of them, is to prevent the big play. And for the most part, it's happened outside of a few aberrations, of course. And what I think the trend is about to be in the whole league is you're going to win by running the ball. You're going to run it straight at defenses now. We're already seeing it. The Commanders are doing it, right? You're seeing other teams, actually running the ball. And the Chargers have an amazing quarterback in Herbert and are deciding to hand the ball off. And that's totally Harbaugh too, right? That's like the way Harbaugh runs the ship, right? I like that they've won by running the ball, and then they can kind of uncork Herbert whenever they need to. I'm with you. I'm not taking them over the Chiefs, but I like them way more in this setup than I have in years past.
Okay. In the NFC, there's only one of the teams that's 2-0 of the teams that I think is not a surprise that they are, and that's Tampa Bay, off of winning a division, off of 4 straight years in the playoffs. The only NFC team to do that. I've talked a lot about them because we played them in the opener. That I'm like, I really buy them. Like, I really like them. I think that they're dangerous. And if things don't go well for Philly, who on paper look really good, or for some reason things slide for San Francisco because it's just time for him to kind of take a step back with all the kind of aging stars that they have and all the money that's spent. Like, you could see a path where they're a playoff team, but they're just not as good, or they can't. They have a lot of injuries already, McCaffrey, Debo, all that. Like, you can kind of see the path to, they're not going to be as formidable. They'll be good, but not as formidable. And if the Rams are going to fall off like they did and Dallas is going to be average, like, there's an opening for a team like Tampa Bay or Detroit, obviously, to kind of make a run. So I'm not surprised by them. So I believe in them. The Saints offense, this can't continue. I mean, they're scoring at what would be a record clip in 2 games. Doing it to Carolina at home was one thing. Doing it in Dallas is another. So, second year for Carr, he's got major speed on the outside with his receivers. Kamara, if he's going to be Kamara, they're going to be explosive. This is ridiculously explosive, but they're going to be explosive. Do I buy them long-term? No, because I don't see consistency in them. I haven't seen it since Drew Brees retired. I think that they're, in a decent spot with this, but there's no way this keeps up. But in an NFC that I don't think has a bunch of behemoths in it, are they a wild card team? Yeah, sure. Sure. Why not? And if Tampa Bay has a bad run for a month, could they steal that division? Yeah, sure. End up 9-8, 10-7, something like that, and steal that division. Sure. So I don't know where you are on the Saints. It's a hell of a start. That's for sure.
One thing I'll say is you and I last week, I remember every single week I would make fun of the Saints because I was like, how with all of their skill position players and having a solid quarterback, how are they scoring like 16 points a game? It was really ridiculous. Now through these first 2 games, it's a different kind of ridiculous. I don't think the offense will keep it up at this clip, but I do think it
would break a record. So that's
right.
Not by a lot.
Sure.
That's not going to happen.
But I do think they've figured it out with Carr. Like, you don't do this as a fluke, looking at how the offense played last year. And I want to see what they do this week. They get the Eagles this week at home. So let's see, really, Eagles are coming off a bad loss. They're going to be pissed, but the Saints are at home. That's a legitimate, NFC contender. I want to see what they do against them because the first 2 weeks, you can jump a team in week 1, right? So it's kind of chaos. So let's I don't want to throw it away, but you take it with a grain of salt. And then, with last week, I don't know, with jumping Dallas, that's a different one. But also we've seen that defense fall apart at times and they were yelling at each other on the sideline. I don't know how much we chalk it up to the other team, but 40 points a game is 40 points a game.
That's right.
I want to see what they do this week. I'm not buying them to win the division, but I am buying their offense to be way better than it was last year. It has to be now.
Listen, this is car wreck city for Philadelphia. It's amazing. Because they got to go down there. No one's more hot than them. They just came off of example 1 of that locker room might go crazy again. And if they somehow get blown out, which Hurts makes a couple weird throws, couple mistakes. All of a sudden it spirals the wrong way. That is a very tough place to play when it starts going the wrong way. It's very loud. There's a real momentum there. Like I always say this, like if you're going to bucket list places you've never been to and you want to go travel with the Commanders, go to New Orleans this year. Like their games are really fun and the Superdome is really fun. And obviously the city's awesome. And considering it's December, you'll get nice weather. It'd be like, it's all worth it to go down and see it. But I always say this, it's not who you play, it's when you play them. This is the worst time on earth for Philadelphia to have to play them. Off of that short week, go there. They have scored on like every drive that they've had, and it's all unlike us, it's all touchdowns. Like that is a 14-0 first quarter lead from going completely berserker on the Eagles. And I don't even know if AJ Brown's playing. Like this could go sideways on them. All right, the other two are Seattle, who they won 2 games. One of them is New England, and I give them credit for winning on the road. They had to go across the country, but I don't think anyone really believes that New England's very good. Then they won their opener. That wasn't a surprise. I will go with I don't buy them as a contender, but, let's see. Because the Rams have started so poorly, maybe there's an opening for them or Arizona to be the second place team or more if all the injuries start to add up on San Francisco. But I think like similarly to the way I feel kind of about Pittsburgh, it's like, I think they're good. I think they're viable. I don't really think they're a contender, but if things go wrong in their division in a way that we didn't anticipate, then maybe they slip into a spot that you didn't expect them to. That's kind of where I've landed on them.
Yeah, I'm not buying them. I'm not buying them any higher than third place in their division. It also took them a clutch drive and then winning in overtime to beat the Patriots. It's not like they handedly won that game. Geno had to have another come from behind victory, which all the credit for them to do that on the road. But I'm not buying them. I just don't think they have the talent to stack up in that division. And we'll get to like some of the other teams, but I'm also buying Arizona now. Like that big lead in Buffalo looks better after what they did to the Rams last week. The Rams are banged up, but they did exactly what they should do against a banged up team. I think the Cardinals are going to be way better.
See, they're interesting because people they have this perception of Kyler, like it's all Call of Duty or he's not serious about any of this. But the reality is, as of a few years ago, everyone was making the case, well, if they don't want him, there'd be 15 teams lined up to get him because he's a major talent. And all of a sudden, he's kind of just back healthy playing again, and people have just forgotten about that. And, you could argue pretty easily that he's the most talented quarterback in that division right now. So, if you take that perspective of it and you just put aside the perceptions of him playing video games and needing homework clauses, then I think, and I will say this too, that Jonathan Gannon guy had them playing very competitively, especially late last year. I don't know that they have the roster and really shouldn't have the roster to keep up with the other teams in this division. But again, if things go a little weird and he has a couple of games where he steals it for him because of his athleticism and playmaking ability, then all of a sudden they could kind of be sitting there to steal something too. So I think that's gotten interesting. All right, last one's the Vikings. And I don't buy them. I mean, I probably should. I like Kevin O'Connell, but I don't think they're as good as Detroit. And I don't think they're as good as Green Bay if Green Bay hangs on long enough to get Jordan Love back and get him healthy. Across the board, I don't. And I'm going to need to, this is going to be a Baker thing. I'm going to need to see it for a full season with Sam Darnold to actually believe that he's like turned his career around, is going to be really good there. I love their weapons. I mean, Jefferson's awesome. I think their defense is marginally better than it was, but not really good. And over the course of a season, just personnel wise, I think you're going to see that kind of manifest. So I call this one a really good start, and they're hovering around 500 by the end of the year.
Yeah, I think when you have a quarterback that's now a professional like Darnold, he has a number one wide receiver like Jefferson. The defense is a little bit better there too. It's a good win against San Francisco, but San Francisco is banged up. I can't buy them, like you said, because of the rest of the division. Eventually, Detroit will get it a little bit more together. If Green Bay holds on, like you said, they'll be a contender there. I even think the Bears might even be a threat if their offense gets figured out. I don't buy them as much. I think
that's
the Vikings,
been a bad start. And you know what? I don't like their body language, and it's already everyone's already having they just like, we don't want to say it out loud, but we think Caleb's weird and we knew it. Like you could feel that, which I hated as a narrative going into the draft. I still hate now, but you could even Terry Bradshaw even did it the other day where I'm like, but he's also like, if in the 70s, if I did this, and like, well, in the 70s, that was 50 years ago, pal.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, right.
There's no internet, dude. Like, a lot's changed, man.
So on that though, what I was going to say was, I think the Vikings have played themselves into third place if the Bears don't get it right in that division. I think they played themselves up a spot, and then maybe if Green Bay doesn't hold on, you could pop up in the second spot and possibly be a wild card. That's what I think that's their ceiling now.
Like, honestly, Green Bay could get buried right now if they lose without Jordan Love. They got away with one last week. We'll see what happens the rest of the way until they get him back. If they can just survive that, they're going to be fine. But if they somehow end up like 1-4 or something like that, it's going to be very hard, even when he comes back, for them to fix it, because they do have tough division games. All right, we'll take a quick break and we'll do the 0-2 teams so you can salvage their season next. Great watch the show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Let's talk about the 0-2 teams and see who can fix their season. Let's do the NFC because I think it's actually very quick. Carolina's a no. Like, that's no.
Yeah.
The Giants, I don't think so. But I mean, like, that's not a surprise. You know, I don't think so. Malik Neighbors looked great last week, so they clearly have a new number one receiver. I actually think their offensive line's better now that they've put some resources into it. And I think Singletary's okay, but like, this comes down to Daniel Jones being consistent, which I don't believe will happen. And then defensively, it's their front and not a lot behind it. So I just don't buy them. Like, it's hard for me to buy them. The Rams are an interesting one. Woulda, coulda, shoulda won in Detroit. So looked at all the part of when I came, into the season going, watch out for them. And now let's see, Nakua's hurt. Cooper Kupp's hurt. Stafford is never making it through seasons. They're 0-2 off a really bad loss. I trust McVay will get them settled and they're not going to be 5-12 or something like that. But my bullish feeling of them making a run to the Super Bowl is officially over. And I have a feeling that they're going to be around 500 now after what I've seen and the injuries that they've taken here early in the season.
Yeah, with you. McVay's not going to let the train get off the tracks here, but they're going to win a couple of games, stay around 500. I don't see the path for them, though, to be a Super Bowl contender. I think they're too banged up now, and that division's too tough. I think that's ultimately what it boils down to. And they already a step down now with the Cardinals taking care of them on Sunday.
I mean, they're 2 games behind Seattle, and they'll probably split with them. Like, they're now behind Arizona, who, as we were just talking about earlier, I think was wildly underrated because Kyler is healthy now. I don't know that I buy them, but they're more formidable than they've been in a couple of years with him if he's healthy and stays healthy. And Marvin Harrison's going to be a problem for everybody. So, like, I don't like, suddenly it doesn't look good for them. It really doesn't. All right, in the AFC, here are the 0-2 teams. Denver, who, boy, Sean Payton's going to have some explaining to do if Bo Nix has a really bad rookie season, because this is my own personal feeling. And like, again, and I'm amateur scout here, but when I watched the lead up, and I knew we were taking either Caleb, Jaden, or Drake May. So it wasn't like I was paying a lot of attention to Bo Nix because I knew that we weren't taking him. Like, there was no chance we were taking him. But when I did watch film of him, I did not see a first-round pick, future really good NFL quarterback. And that's just my opinion of it. And clearly, I'm not going to pretend I know more than Sean Payton, but they were all in on this guy. And it is really early, and I don't think judgments are fair. I don't think we should judge that Jaden's going to be awesome off of the first couple of games. I don't think we should judge that Caleb's a bust off of the first couple of games in the same way that I'd be like, Bo Nix struggled. Duh. Like Bo Nix. And like Bo Nix struggled against Pittsburgh. Like, duh. Like, Tomlin kills quarterbacks like this. But I didn't love him coming. And Sean Payton, this is the second time that they've gone out of their way to do something extraordinary. Like, they did it with Russ. That was a huge mistake. Now they went and traded for Sean Payton to bring him in. They're paying him $1 bazillion. He goes crazy for, I have to get Bo Nix, and he better be right. Like, that's the only way I would say it. He better be right about that. And I don't know that he's going to be. And my opinion going in was, I'll hear you out. You guys are the pros, but he wouldn't be my choice if it was up to me.
As you know, I love it when teams temper expectations or put expectations upon themselves, because at that point I am allowed to criticize you in a different way than I would have before. Like, the Patriots did the right thing with Drake May. They didn't make him the starter right away. He's developing. He's not starting right now. The Broncos went the complete opposite with a guy that wasn't a top 5 pick. And it was, we're all in on this guy. He killed his pre-draft meetings. Peyton's all in. He passed all of these tests. They told me he's the second coming. So now I have to treat it like, if he's not good, that's on you guys now. And I don't like Peyton as a person personally too. So I don't really buy the snake oil, like salesman type pitch that he does. And so now that Bo Nix has come out and he looks a little goofy too, like he's making some weird plays, and I get it. It's 2 games into his career. I have to judge it harder though, because you told me he's really good and he outright won the job there. Not to say they had a veteran that was going to win the job, over him. But, like you said, you better be right. I'm not buying it with him, though. I just don't think there's enough there, or he needs to develop longer, and that's going to take a little bit.
I mean, listen, I watch a lot of film, and I don't sit there and pretend that I could be a scout or a GM or anything like that, but I have my opinions of it, and I didn't see it with him personally, but I also didn't look as hard as some of these others would, because I knew we were never taking him. It's always from our point of view, because I'm like, well, are we going to actually select this guy? And I knew that wasn't going to be the case, but I didn't love him. And I didn't think he was a first round pick personally. Like, this is one of those, it's a pressurized situation. Like, if he got taken in the 3rd round, I think everybody'd be like, oh, whatever. But because they went out of their way to do this, so we'll see, and then Peyton, listen, I always defer to these people, and I don't try to pretend I know more than them. I don't. So, like, we'll see, we'll see what happens. With Tennessee, I actually really liked Will Levis coming out of Kentucky, but he's doing crazy stuff here at the beginning of the year. And, like, the funny part is like their division is kind of shaping up the way I think everyone thought it would. Like, Houston is really good. Let's see Stroud in year 2. I want to see it again, but still they loaded up. They look well coached. They look really good. They're the front runner. The Colts we'll see with Anthony Richardson, but I don't know that I buy them. Jacksonville, they need to prove to me that they are the team they were a couple of years ago, because last year was really weird, and this start for them is really bad. So there's a path for a team like Tennessee to be a second place team in that division. But if Will Levis is going to do these things in the middle of a game, they will lose consistently. So I do not buy them that they will fix their season, because I think their quarterback will throw up on himself too many times. And like that, there's no worse feeling in the sport when you know that at some point he's going to do something that is going to alter the game. Like, you just know it. You don't know when, you don't know how, you don't know what it's going to look like, but he will. And that is an unnerving feeling when you come into every single week.
It was funny that you mentioned that. Part of my take talked about that the other day, that I saw a clip where they're like, is there a worse feeling than when your quarterback isn't good and he drops back to pass and you have no idea what you're about to get? And I feel like that's what
I actually don't think he's bad. I actually think he's pretty good. But if you make plays like that, you lose. If those are your instincts are poor. And that's hard to coach out of you, honestly.
One of the cool clips I saw from over the weekend, though, was their head coach. I guess he had a weird fumble that costed them 3 points, and he was like freaking out on the sidelines, and you could see a mouth like, "You effing idiot," or something along those lines. And he was asked about it after the game, and he was like, "I was pissed. He costed us 3 points. He's an adult. He can figure it out." I was like, "Oh, I like this." I was like, "This is good." I think I saw it on McAfee. McAfee played it for Schefter, and both of them were like, we need a little bit more of this in the NFL, of like, guys are allowed to get mad when their quarterbacks make boneheaded decisions, because they know they're boneheaded decisions. So maybe he'll improve.
Like me, that you weren't mad when he did something dumb. Like we saw you were, and you should have been.
So one thing I'll just say on that to finish, though, is like, clearly though, Levis can improve if they are already talking to each other like that in public. I actually like it a little bit more than I did yesterday.
I liked him coming out. I actually give him a chance. I was kind of into him. I'll buy in that he might be pretty good. Colts, I don't buy. I think Richardson is going to be too erratic. I think he's a great athlete, and he's going to make some great plays, and they're going to steal a couple of games because he makes unbelievable athletic plays, but I don't think they're good enough to overcome either inconsistency in terms of just completion percentages or mistakes that he's going to make. So I don't buy them to turn their season around. Could they end up somewhere near 500? Sure, especially in what looks like a weak division, but I certainly don't buy them. And with Jacksonville, they're just a disappointment now. Like they paid, Trevor all this money. He's Bradley Beal. I can't name the game that he took over, but I don't know that they have anybody even remotely close that's better than him. The only thing they didn't do was give him a no trade clause. Like that's the only difference between the two at this point. If they traded him for Kuzma, it'd probably be a great idea. So I don't know. I just don't buy them because I don't understand what's going on. Like I look at them and I go, you guys should be better than this. You have this quarterback that should make you better than this, but you're just not. And you'll have to tell me why, because I can't figure it out. So because I can't figure it out and because you can't explain it to me and because you're so under the radar with the former number 1 overall pick who missed the game in 58 years before he entered the NFL, I'm kind of just out. So I just don't believe you anymore. And I think you're going to be average. And I don't know why, but that's where I've landed on you. I don't know why you're average, but you are. And I'm just going to believe it until I'm told otherwise.
I'll start with the Colts. They also didn't help Richardson out this weekend. Jonathan Taylor had like 12 carries for 108 yards and then didn't have the ball in the fourth quarter, like at all. They were only down by 6. And so that's a dumb coaching decision with a rookie quarterback that we've seen is erratic. Yeah, he can flick his wrist and it'll go 70 yards, but how you didn't help your quarterback out on the road in Lambeau, that's a poor coaching decision right there. So I don't believe the Colts are getting out of their 0-2 hole. Not that I believed in them that much. And then, yeah, to the Jags, I'm just patting myself on the back here. I was all over the Jags from the beginning. I did not believe in them. I didn't believe in paying Trevor. Their roster's fine. Can Dougie P coach? I don't know. Like, did he just catch lightning in the bottle with Philly? Like, there's a lot of just questions about that team. And, this happens too. And I like to bring like the hockey analogy over here. Where's the sandpaper on the Jags? I don't see like kind of any kind of toughness or anything that'll just kind of get them through the season. I've been out on them and I will stay out on them at 0-2.
All right. So the last two in the AFC are the ones that are worth discussing, which is Baltimore and Cincinnati. Cincinnati season on the line this week. That's an interesting question. I bet if you ask them they're going to tell you that. And I'm actually going to talk to Dan Horde, who's their play-by-play voice, and I'll air that interview probably on Monday to lead into the game. But I'm going to ask him that question. Do you honestly feel like your season's on the line? Because certainly they're going to be a heavy favorite. Certainly at home, 0-2, 0-3, the percentages of getting to the playoffs. And in a division like that, that's a meat grinder. I mean, they're not going to feel very good if they come out on a loss. I'll see how honest he is about it or like what his position is on it. But I do feel like this is a bad spot for Washington in that what's on the line for them. What they're going to be hearing all day. Like I'm all into the Joe Gibbs, like don't say things to piss people off. And all day long on Monday, all they're going to hear leading into Monday Night Football because they're promoting the game on ESPN is how their season's on the line. And I really so I don't love that setup, honestly, and hopefully we win anyway, but I don't love that setup. Do I buy them? Not as much in the past to turn it around and be like right there, but not unlike the conversation about Buffalo. Burrow's just a little too good. And if he stays healthy with those receivers and they stay healthy and motivated, which is an interesting question off of the contract negotiations that they've had, well, their offense will figure it out for sure at some point. They're going to score a lot of points, I think. I don't know that they have the run game they used to have, so that's interesting too. And then defensively, not unlike Buffalo, they're just not as good as they were because they spent money on one side of the ball. They didn't on the other. It's being stripped away a little bit. So I don't buy them to turn it around to be a Super Bowl contender, but I do buy them to be in the playoffs because of Burrow and Chase and Higgins. Like it's hard to bet against that. So of the two, Baltimore, Cincinnati, I'm more inclined to believe Baltimore will turn around. I'll get to them in a second. I'm not inclined to believe that Cincinnati turns it around to the point where they're scary like they were a couple of years ago, but I'll buy them as a playoff team because Burrow is so good.
I'm kind of looking at Cincinnati with the same vibes that I looked at the Cowboys before the season kicked off, right? The Cowboys didn't pay anybody, and then all of a sudden they paid CeeDee Lamb, they paid Dak. Probably Micah Parsons is more at ease right now. The vibes around that team, even though they lost over the weekend, are probably way better than they were, right? I think the Bengals are the same light, though, because it stems back from the offseason. Why didn't they re-sign Mixon? Like, he's kind of a heart and soul guy for that team. So that was a money decision. They clearly didn't even want to negotiate with Higgins, which is a choice. I'm not going to really knock that one because of Chase. But then you didn't negotiate with Chase either. He's now playing begrudgingly without a new deal. I look at them as they have the more potential to go sideways. I'm with you that Burrow is probably going to keep them in some games, but they don't have a run game now. And as I said, teams are realizing now running the ball is working in this iteration of the NFL's defenses. I don't like their run game. It's going to fall to Burrow, and do his receivers get right? I'm not sure. They're going to teeter more, I think, than the Ravens are, and that's why I'm not buying them.
Yeah, last one's Baltimore. They've just done it too many times. So I have to think that what happened last week was an aberration. And I just have to believe that, but they lost their whole defensive staff. And so would their defense replicate what they did a year ago, which was inarguably the best defense in the NFL? I don't know. I looked at their roster of players and I'm like, they're good, but not great. I'm actually surprised that they had the outcomes that they did. I thought their scheme worked really well last year. Well, it's going to be a little different this year. Even the, chief lieutenant behind Mike McDonald is now the defensive coordinator in Miami. So they don't even have they didn't have that succession plan. So it's different this year. I trust Harbaugh though, and I trust Lamar, and I think and Henry, and I think they'll have some of those games. It'll hit at some point where their offense kind of overwhelms some people. They traditionally get these 17-0 leads and then they just kind of cruise the wins. I think that will happen. So I buy them. And at 0-2, if they ended up winning that division, that wouldn't surprise me. I think it's going to be hard now because of Pittsburgh's start, but that wouldn't surprise me. So I buy them to turn it around.
Yeah, I think you actually have to look at what happened within their games too. They were a throw away from beating the Chiefs, right? Who are a contender. And I think you take that into account. And then last week, their loss against the Raiders, we talk about them every year. They're good for one of these blown losses for some reason. It happens every single year with them at the beginning of the year too. They did it against Pittsburgh last year where they lost an early one. And it was how did that happen? And I just think this happens to them. And it just happened to happen to them in the first 2 weeks of the season. I'm with you. Harbaugh's too good of a coach to let that thing go sideways. Their offense is a little bit too talented. I think their defense just figures it out in the end. They're a little too good to fail. They're just not going to do it.
All right, let me take a quick break. Bram Buster Show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Bram Buster Show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital. Let's stay in Baltimore, hon. I was talking to you about this last night, and I want to spend a few minutes on it, which is the Baltimore Orioles are going to make the playoffs, likely as a wild card team, because they're kind of running out of time to catch the Yankees, but they're too far up in the wild card. They'd have to go horribly wrong for the last couple of weeks, and I know they lost really badly last night, but they are a really good team. They've been a wire-to-wire contender. They're off of a playoff season. They did get a true ace, to start the offseason by bringing in Corbin Burns. Most people don't believe they did enough at the trade deadline. It's fine. We could parse that out, but they are really good. And yet there is not of the media people that I watch that cover them or just the general vibe of the fans. If you read social media, there's not a single person there that believes they're going to have some kind of run in October, which is the worst juju of all juju heading into a season. It seems to be a lack of acknowledgement of how good they actually are. And just a belief of we might be good, but we know we're not good enough. And we're preparing ourselves for failure and probably early because of our pitching. And it's sad to watch because I'm this team is so good, but no one believes in them. And if you listen, just the post-game reports or some of the quotes that come out of the locker room, it is totally seeped in. You can feel it from them that they know they're going to be in the playoffs and not go very far. They know it.
There was a quote from Brandon Hyde already. I think it was over the weekend or maybe last week where he basically has already said to the team, we're going to make it in and I need you to hit the reset button and basically believe that you're going to win and things are going to be different. And I'm like, why do you sound like the Caps down 3-2 to the Penguins right now? What's going on? So
the playoffs haven't started yet. What do you mean hit the reset button? Hit the reset button. You have one of the best records in the game. What do you need to hit a reset button for? This is what I'm saying. They've allowed the wrong mentality to kind of sift through a locker room. You guys need to look at your record and realize that you are good. I don't even understand why you lack confidence. Everyone on the outside, let them have that feeling about you. Why do you believe it? But because you guys are verbalizing it and saying it, it's it's your own, you're making your own destiny, honestly. And so I also believe they won't go very far, and that sucks because I look at this team and I go, they could have a dynasty with the lineup that they have. But if this is how they believe in themselves, they're never going to win crap. And it feels like this is what fans do. I'm worried about this. They're not going to get over that. You know what? The Nationals, the year they won the World Series, no one thought they were going to win the World Series. They were not the best team, but they were not sitting there going like, yeah, our record is what it is, but we actually think we stink. Like they sound like the sports radio in their locker room. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think what sucks the most is like last year they actually got a little bit of a mulligan once it all played out, right? Like they lost to the Rangers, who were the buzzsaw last year, right? Like they won the World Series, and all of a sudden that opening series loss looked way better.
First time they were in the playoffs as a group, so everyone goes, "All right, first time." You know, most of the time you're like, "All right, you'll see next year." No, that's not how people are acting about it at all.
And what actually I think is the worst part about this, upcoming playoff run is there's not a single team that has really said, oh, we're the number one team that you need to watch out for. All of these teams have little flaws that you can exploit, and you don't know how it's going to shake out in the postseason. This one's wide open. Like, I don't think there's a legitimate contender in both the AL and the NL when it comes down to it. So, like, I would have liked a little bit more, hey, it's wide open. Like, everyone's got their problems, but they're kind of permeating in their own locker room, which I don't like the vibes, man. It's bad vibes.
I don't like the vibes either, but it's like there is a part of me that wants to go full Rivera on them and be like, guys. Like, right. You guys have been it's not like you've had some, like the Nationals did when they won it, some magical run in the summer to like get to this point. They've been front runners the whole time. They were contenders walking in. Their record proves they're contenders. They're not a disappointment. They're not San Diego from a year ago or whatever. Like, guys, what's wrong with you? Like, Why are you believing what everyone is saying about you when your record is what it is?
Exactly.
Like, have some disbelief if you want to, or how about galvanize over, we know you don't believe in us and we don't care. But that's not what they're doing. They're sounding like La Canfora every day. It's like nuts. It's totally nuts.
What I think they're missing too is, last year we knew they were going to be contenders going in. I don't think we thought they were going to win 100 games last year. So they really embraced that, and it was all about the splash zone, right? And then the year before, where remember they entered into September like almost in a wild card spot, and they called themselves Chaos. Remember, it was like Chaos is coming. Like they had an identity 2 years ago. They had an identity last year, and this year's identity is like, well, we're going to make it. We just don't know what's going to happen. That's a bad identity to have going into the postseason.
These guys like win 2 out of every 3 games they play, and they won't look at each other in the eye. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Like, I'm so accustomed to this grandiose ego for all of these guys, especially on good teams, that to hear this out of a team that's young and really good, it's disturbing. Like, someone needs to get a handle on that. And I don't know who it is. Maybe it's the manager or the GM or the owner. Someone needs to like shake them and go, you guys are really good, right? Like, how'd you lose sight of that?
What I actually don't understand is like one of their team captains is James McCann. McCann's been around the block a million times. They look at him as like the captain of the team, essentially. I'm surprised he hasn't kind of tried to reel them all in. He's the guy that I would look at to do that, because when we talk about like sandpaper and veterans to like get a squad, glued together, he's the guy. So I'm surprised it's gone this way.
It's really weird. All right, talk to y'all tomorrow. Brad Bush Show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital.